Welcome to More Than Kumbaya, a series of conversations hosted by the Interfaith Federation of Greater Baton Rouge. The song Kumbaya is often associated with peace and harmony, and yet in Kumbaya there's a significant verse, "Someone is crying, Lord." We know we cannot have peace as long as someone cries. What is that cry? What is that lament? What actions will transform our laments into peace for all people? Each conversation is designed to advance understanding and action. You're invited to use this video for your own personal reflection, to gather small groups together, be it your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, your faith community. Consider the many ways that you have within your circle of influence and interaction. At the end of this conversation, this same video, this same screen will appear again. At any point, you can pause the video for your small group conversation. Keep in mind, each of us sees life through our own unique viewpoint. We do not know what we do not know. We can only imagine what it is to be of a different color or gender, to be the other. We are invited to stop, to listen to each other, to discover and rediscover our shared humanity. Today with me is Michael Adams from the 100 Black Men. I am Reverend Robin McCullough-Beatty with the Interfaith Federation of Greater Baton Rouge. Welcome, how are you today?
Good morning, Reverend. How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, my name is Mike. My friends call me Mike. Michael Adams. I am an attorney here in Baton Rouge. I'm a partner with the firm of DeQueer, Clark & Adams. We are a boutique law firm. I grew up in a small town about 2 hours from here, Bogalusa, Louisiana. I left Bogalusa in 1981 and came to Southern University, where I obtained a degree in economics. Later, I went to the Southern University Law Center and finished with a Juris Doctorate in law. I didn't know my wife there at Southern, but she was there at about the same time. We met after school and married, and we have 3 beautiful, beautiful children. Our youngest, Elise, just graduated from Lee Magnet High School, and that was sort of, crazy time not to really have a senior year. So we went through all of the things of her not having a traditional senior year. Our oldest has just finished with a degree in biology from Xavier, and our middle son, Lyle, he's matriculating now at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, studying film and movie production. They keep us pretty busy, though.
I bet. Now you're involved with 100 Black Men. So tell us a little bit about 100 Black Men, and also how it is that you are attracted to invest. I understand you're the incoming president. Is that correct?
Correct.
So how'd you get involved with it? Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, my involvement goes a little ways back. The concept of the 100 Black Men was devised several years back when, during a speech, one of the original members said, if I had 100 good Black men to stand up, we can make a difference. And that speech left from New York City, I believe, to Los Angeles, and the organization sort of blossomed. But about 26, maybe 27 years ago, I got a call from a guy by the name of Brace Godfrey. And he said, Mike, listen, there are a few of us that have met, and we want to bring a chapter of the 100 Black Men of America to Baton Rouge. And I became one of the original founding board members and original members of the organization. Okay. So I've been involved since its infancy here in Baton Rouge, and I have been fortunate to have been elected its next president and chairman of the board. And so I officially take over July 1. But it is an organization that is dedicated to like-minded men on a mission to improve the life of young people in this community, in particularly African-American youth. We have four pillars that we believe in. We believe in being strong and mentoring is one of the foundations of what we offer. Health and wellness, education, and financial literacy. And so my goal as the next president and chairman is to continue our efforts in mentoring first, but to move our priorities and shake them a little different to be followed behind health and wellness. And I'm doing that because you see now, everybody sees now, the adverse impact that having a unhealthy community has had on the African American community with the fight with the COVID-19 virus. And we have to, as leaders in our community, have to emphasize to our children healthy living habits, healthy eating habits, I say to our guys, it makes no sense to have a kid sitting in a classroom and you're pounding academic information into him and he's unhealthy. He hadn't had a good meal. He hadn't had a good night's sleep. He hadn't been taught how to properly exercise. Those pre-existing sort of conditions and problems that show a disproportionate death rate among African Americans because of the COVID virus, we have to start talking about that and dealing with that at a much younger age. So my goal as I take over and lead the organization will be, we will continue to mentor as we always have the last 26 years, but we're going to mentor with more of a purpose, health and wellness purpose, and a little bit more of a social conscience purpose because of where we find ourselves now in our society.
Let's focus on that a little bit. Where we find ourselves now. You know, I think you're right. We are facing, in a sense, two pandemics, and one on COVID-19, but also racism. You know, two things that have devastating impact on our society. When you think of growing up here in Baton Rouge today, what are the challenges? You know, why is 100 Black men needed for Baton Rouge and what young people face today?
You know, I was driving in this morning and I was listening to a local talk radio show, and there was a guest on the show that wrote a book about race in America. And she made the statement that Baton Rouge has not changed in 40 years since she left Baton Rouge. And that she was a victim, she and her family were victims of having a cross being burned in their front yard right here in Baton Rouge in the 70s. And there were two callers that called in, and one said was an older lady who she said, I remember that, and it really hadn't changed. I'm still here now. I'm still in that same area, and things are just underground. And there was another caller that called in, and he sounded to be a younger white gentleman, and he said, why are you guys still talking about the past? You're still living in the past. And that to me was an example of how we are talking around each other and we're not listening to each other. And that it is just as important today to have our young people realize that the problems of systemic racism, the problems of white privilege, the problems of white hate and bigotry, there's a reason that the Black community feels that those problems are still so prevalent today. And I told you I grew up in Bogalusa, and it was a hotbed of civil rights, the civil rights movement in the 60s and the 70s. And my first grade class integrated schools in Bogalusa. And one unique story I have about that is that when my wife and I had our first son, we got a call from friend of ours who said, listen, would you guys consider putting Langston in the first grade class with some of our friends' kids at this religious school, prominent religious school here in town? And we said, what do you mean? They said, we are chairing the diversity committee, and there are no Black kids in the first grade. And so they reached out to us and five other couples. And if I name them, you know them all by name. And we all band together and we put our 6-year-olds together in this school to basically integrate that school. And it was amazing to me that 30 years later, from when my first grade class integrated the schools in Bogalusa, I had to relive the experience of my son in Baton Rouge in the 90s being in a kindergarten class to integrate a school here.
Right.
So I say that to say that our children see it. Growing up in Baton Rouge, it still happens, it still exists, and it's our job not only to help mentor them and train them into how to be good citizens, but it's also now our job. And I'm speaking from the 100s perspective and from, because our motto is they'll be what they see. So they have to see us now also demand the majority community, the white community, to check yourself. We're going to mentor these kids to follow the rules, to be compliant, to be good citizens, but you also have to change. You also have to change your attitudes. You also have to change your behaviors. You know, it's not enough, Robin, to tell a kid to do all the right things and he still can be killed in the streets. We have to now tell everybody that you have to change your behavior and be more open, not be tone deaf, to listen. And it's a hard conversation to have, but we're at this point now where we have to have it. And I thank you for this opportunity to have it.
And so if someone is at that point of awakening, maybe a white person who is seeing something for this first time, finally hearing, what is it that you hope they are hearing or seeing or feeling in the depth of their heart? What is it what is this awakening that you hope happens?
Honestly, I'm amazed that they're now awakened, or that they now see it. And so once I get past that, it's a question of humanity. It's a question of, doing the right thing. It's not enough again to say, okay, we just agree to be disagreeable. Well, you can't, not on this subject. You can't agree to be disagreeable on a question of humanity, of race, of civil rights, of basic human rights. It is right or wrong. And it's also no longer enough to say, the classic, well, I'm not a racist. I have Black friends. I know Black people. What has happened in our country now requires the majority community and our wonderful white brothers and sisters to become anti-racist. You have to, one, in my opinion, talk about it. You have to, two, acknowledge that it still exists. And you have to, three, have the talk. And Black people know what that means. I've had the talk with my two sons who were African American teenagers, worried about if they'd come home at night when they leave the house, and how to respond or react if those blue lights come on, or if they're walking in the mall, or if they're sitting in a fast food restaurant. And the same thing with my daughter. I expect now that the majority of society, you need to have the talk at home. You need to have the talk in your workspace. You need to have the talk in your community churches and religious spaces. And even if those places are not diverse, there still should be open dialogue about why they're not diverse. what is really going on. How do people really feel? So this awakening, watching that horrific video, I, that's one of the blessings, I guess, that has come from it. But it's way overdue. It's way overdue.
And this video that you're referencing is the George Floyd video that we've been seeing over and over, which is prompting this awakening and multi-generational, multiracial protests throughout our community. That So when you talk about the talk with your children, your reference to the talk is different than white people and the talk. So let's be clear about what are you meaning the talk for white people?
Well, the talk that white people have to have is that um, Black Americans feel like African Americans in this country feel like they have not been heard. They feel like that it is a dual class society. And African Americans feel like that there are systems that have been put in place that hold us back. And I heard one of the greatest ways of explaining it is we want your knee off our neck just to be able to breathe and be able to be equal. The talk ought to be about in education, in entertainment, in the workspace, that there has been, this country was built on the backs of people that look like me. This country created wealth and ingenuity and enterprise based upon hundreds of years, 400 years of free labor. Okay. When this country was created in the Declaration of Independence, we were not full citizens. And some of our founding fathers were great, intellectuals, but they never saw us as equal. So you have to start as a foundation with understanding that for 401 years, you can't keep your knee on people's neck and expect them to not have it ingrained in their somebody. And it's not enough to say, well, you know what? I didn't have slaves, or it wasn't me that did that. But no, but you are the product of a system that has allowed you to benefit from the system that held me back. And you have to understand that it's not something that you could disagree on. Black America can't fix racism. We can mentor kids and tell them how to act and respond. It's incumbent upon white America to change racism. And so that awakening is so important right now. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It's yeah, it does. This phrase, Black Lives Matter, is it's a phrase that's out there. It's been out there for a while. What is it that you hear in that phrase? And how would you like to respond to people who say all lives matter? What is the point? Why differentiate that they don't understand that basic statement? So from you as a person, what are you hearing? And what is it that the message is on that?
We heard that phrase here in Baton Rouge in 2016 with the killing of Alton Sterling.
Right.
And the killing of the unfortunate killing of those police officers. And so this community has had a chance to really deal with that movement before the rest of the country. And we still have not, in my opinion, completely dealt with it. But let me throw it back to you three different ways when I think about Black Lives Matter. And I love what the mayor of DC did by painting it on 16th Street in front of the White House. I think that was kind of cool. But what if you were a school teacher and you had a classroom full of first graders, and they're full of energy, all sort of stuff, and you walked in your classroom, and there was and you had 20 first graders in your classroom, and there was one little kid in the corner, and he's turning blue, and he's choking on a piece of candy. Would you say all the kids in the classroom matter? That's an assumption. Yeah, we already know that. But there's one kid over in the corner turning blue. He needs some special attention. There's a reason why he's over there choking. How about this one? What if you're at your home and you hear the fire trucks coming down your street, and the fire department gets there, and your neighbor's house is on fire, and the firemen pull out the water hoses and they start spraying down all the other houses in the neighborhood. They wet your house down, they wet the guys across the street down, and your neighbor house is on fire. Well, every house in the neighborhood matters, but there's a house on fire, okay? And special attention needs to be placed on the house on fire. And here's my last one. So, so how about a new couple that's about to be married? And they get up, and as you guys do who officiate weddings, you say, you may now kiss your bride. And the bride leans in and she says, I love you, to her groom. And the groom leans in and he says, I love everybody. Well, wait a minute. Wouldn't that make her feel just a little strange? You know, listen, Black lives matter because Black people want love. We feel like that we're in a burning house and there is nobody coming to help us, and we're choking and can't breathe. It does not take away from anybody else, but there's something that has happened in this country to put us in this position, and you should not be offended or put off when you hear that phrase. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's
Mhm.
the best way I can give
I've
it.
I've thought of it as a grandparent who has a grandchild come to her to say, "Do all grandchildren matter?" And for the grandmother to have to pause and say, "Why would you have to ask that question?
Right,
What has happened in your life that you would even doubt that?"
right.
And I think for those who hear, who, what is it? Why would someone have to even make that statement?
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter.
Because because the house is on fire, Reverend McCullough, because we're choking, and because we don't feel like we getting the love that that we deserve. And that's why it's important to not only make that statement, but embrace that statement.
And so often in mentoring and working as and teaching or whatever, it's you hear the question, you hear a statement, but you have to ask, what has prompted the statement? What is behind that? What is the pain? Why would someone even bring that to light to get at the heart of the issue?
I, I, well, I think they have become aware, keenly aware of the problem, and uh, they're not being heard.
Right.
We are tone deaf about the reality of what is actually going on in this country and what has been going on. You know, and kids are so smart these days and so resilient and so understanding that racism is not something that they're born with. It is an ugly disease that is learned behavior, but it's easily learned because there are systems in place that hold people back, that push people down, and those people are people that look like me. Okay, it is not a system. The system works for those it was designed to work for, and that's white America. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now it's time for the system to work for everybody. And one of the most amazing things, though, Reverend, is that people around the world have seen it this time. And maybe because we've all been locked up. You know, I've heard that's the reason we've all been locked up, because of the COVID pandemic, and we don't have a lot to do but watch these little devices all the time. But whatever the reason for the awakening, thank God, And so we have to not only ride this wave, but there has to be real action taken.
So as you work with these young people in 10 years, if you gather the people you're working with today, in 10 years, what do you hope has changed in Baton Rouge in 10 years because of all this?
Well, I would hope that one of the things that we do in the 100 is that we take kids at 6th grade and we tell them, listen, if you stay with our program throughout high school, we will help you go to college, go to some post-secondary school, whatever it is. I would hope in 10 years that some of those young people decide to come back home, that they don't just leave. They don't take that great intellectual energy and all that they've learned and go be great people somewhere else. That the mass exodus of young, smart people leaving here is probably hemorrhaging, because we have some great universities here that train our kids. And I would love to see them come back and be part of building a better and a bigger and brighter Baton Rouge that we all can enjoy.
So it sounds like you really have hope.
Oh, absolutely. If you have faith, hope is its first cousin. So you have to pair the two together, and you have to be able to say that even my small part can make a difference, and we all have to do our part. We can't be the 100. We're not everything for everybody. We're not the save all. We don't have all the answers. But what we do say is that what they see is what they'll be. And we have to show young people, and now we have to show some old people, that there are positive, fantastic, productive African American men who can make a difference, who take care of their families, who love their wives, who go to work every day, and who pay their taxes, and who really make this community what it is. And that's what we want them to emulate.
But your hope and faith does not come in the midst of easy days. And
Okay.
that's the power of, in the midst of two pandemics, you still speak of hope. You still speak of the possibility.
You have to put your hope and faith to work. you know so that's the next thing, is that you have to get up after we take this message and thoughts, and we meditate and we pray about it. We have to get up and go to work and do the hard job. And so that's what we're built for.
Any final words before we wrap up our conversation?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this time with you. I challenge those who listen to this to have that talk, to have the hard conversations, to look in the mirror and ask the question, can I do anything to make a difference? Have I done anything that has made a difference? And if you can answer that question in the positive, I think we are headed in the right direction. Thank you.
I thank you for your time and for your insights. If you would like to follow up with Mike at all, here's the way to reach him through the 100 Black Men, or is also if you want to reach out to me. Again, I thank you all for listening, for where this conversation might go. You're encouraged to pause this video at this point and consider, what did you hear? How did you feel as you listened? What surprised you? And that's a big open question. What if? What are possible actions? And what are you being called to do? Blessings on your conversation.